difficult. Culturally, there can be stigma attached to these struggles, and our hope is to change that stigma. So to get a general idea, and maybe just for the moment we can turn the lights back up a little bit, to get a general idea with a show of hands, who here is caring for a child under the age of 9 who has these challenges? Is there anybody under the age of 9? Great. It can be really hard when they're little to try and figure this stuff out. How about a child between the ages of 9 and 12? Yeah, lots of those too, and that's a particularly difficult time. And then how about a teenager? Yes, I have one of those. Being a teenager wasn't hard enough to begin with, right? So if we look around, there were many hands that went up. This is your larger extended family, and it's powerful to come together. So please take this opportunity to feel a part of this community and talk with and support one another. Please also look through the educational materials that we have here tonight. By coming together and educating ourselves and our community, we're helping to decrease the isolation and reduce the stigma that's associated with these challenges. The interest in what Dr. McKinlay has to offer has proven substantial. This evening we had 200 registrants. Tomorrow we have 80 practitioners coming from across BC. And Friday we have 175 educators who will hear Dr. McKinlay speak. Clearly we're not alone, and our support circle is about to expand. So, to tell you a little bit about him, Dr. McKinlay is a registered psychologist, currently practicing with children and adolescents in the area of clinical and school psychology. He also works in the Break Shop, which is a service he created for youth with Tourette Syndrome and associated disorders at the Child and Parent Resource Institute in London, Ontario. Dr. McKinlay is a leading North American expert, and we are very fortunate to have him here with us this evening. So please help me welcome Dr. Duncan McKinlay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that greatly. Slides up here? Wonderful. There we go. So those are wonderful numbers that you folks have attracted. I think another round of applause to the TSSC chapter. I think that you've done a wonderful job of putting this together. I think you've done a couple of very clever things. One of which is, anyone who's in the Tourette's field knows that, the secret amongst us that work in Tourette's clinics is that we're not really Tourette's clinics, we're the everything that goes along with Tourette's clinics. That, we have, whether it's a parent or a teacher, or a local clinician contacting us, they're often saying, we wish you would just stick. It's all the impulsivity, it's the obsessiveness, it's the irritability, it's all these other things that are bringing us into your office today, Doc. And so I think people in the Tourette's community know that if we put out a poster that says, come to this talk on Tourette syndrome, that we're really going to be talking about at least as much all the stuff that goes along with Tourette's. But because a lot of people don't necessarily know that until their bums are in the chairs, I think one of the very clever things that the Victoria chapter did was to not call this a presentation on Tourette's, but to call it really what it is, a more global presentation on just impulse control issues, or as I'm going to be talking to you about tonight, leaky brakes, introducing you to that particular model. One comment to the person up the booth, but if I'm going to be looking for hands, there's no way I'm going to see them with the spotlights on me. So I'm okay if, even just, the house lights are enough, just that, that's a little bit better. Then I can kind of see who all's out there and see if you're getting impatient, and I should ask, see if you have a question or something. So it's been a little while since I've counted. I've got to be coming up on close to 1,000 presentations I've done at this point. But the Victoria chapter also has the distinction of being the first group at all who put together not just one website, but 2 websites for my visit here. So I was pretty impressed by that. I've never had a website made in my honor before, level 2. So anyway, let's get rolling. So as you saw on the first slide, I hail from London, Ontario. It's a place called CPID, the Child and Parent Resource Institute. And they're a mental health care facility in Ontario that's the myriad of different services they offer. And I was hired there about 10 years ago to develop this specialized outpatient clinic called Break Shop. So you might be wondering, why this guy, all the way across the country to talk about a service that we can't access. Well, you can. Because here's the thing, that even within Ontario, we're known as a tertiary mental health care facility. So basically what that means is that we cover the entire province. And so if we were trying to be everything to everyone, even just within our own province, our wait lists would just be impossible to navigate. So really, our mandate isn't to be anyone's first stop shop. Our mandate across the province is to be everyone's last stop shop. So, whether you're in Ottawa, Owen Sound, or Victoria, you have your local GPs, your psychoeducational consultants, your school support teams, your local agencies. But, every once in a while, of course, people start to scratch their heads and throw their hands up in the air. Maybe it's just a very severe case. Maybe it's very complex symptoms. It's hard to figure out, what all is going on there, or maybe what's going on, but there's a particular treatment that's specialized enough that's just not available in your rural community. And so, for a variety of reasons, across Ontario, people may be starting to throw their hands up saying, "What next?" And CPID is intended to be that what next. So our role is not to reinvent any wheels or to swoop in and take over service, but simply to supplement, to provide that specialized service, to fill in the holes and the gaps and do consulting and educating and training. But really, in a weird sort of way, as a tertiary clinician, my ultimate goal is to get fired. If eventually we developed enough of a community of practice that no one's walking through my door, and so I get handed my pink slip, that's fabulous. Because when you're a tertiary clinician, you know that by definition, any family, any school, any agency, by the time they're contacting you, they've been to hell and back, probably a few times along the way. And so, it sounds kind of weird for psychologists to say this, but I don't want to see any patients anymore. That means that maybe the system's getting a little bit better. So I say all this because, yes, fine, I'm way out here on the West Coast, but even within Ontario, if it's a family that is 3 hours away, they have 4 kids, 5 jobs, and 0 cars, a fat lot of good CPID is going to be to them if we expect them to come to us and jump through all of our hoops and get through the barriers to get any help or service. And so I've taken our tertiary mandate, I guess, very seriously. I'm determined to ensure that I won't be happy, I won't rest until everything that we can offer in person can also be offered just as well, just as effectively, virtually or online. And so that's where you guys come in, because it's one thing if I do my song and dance tonight for a couple of hours and then screw on back to London. That's how good I was. But really, tonight's not meant to be a cram in as much of my dog and pony show as possible and then run away and hope that my band-aids help for a couple of weeks before they fall off. No, tonight is really more just kind of an introduction. It's an introduction to not just a service, but a way of thinking, a bit of a paradigm shift about how to understand these kids a little bit better, and really to an invitation that, to show you, here's what we have to offer, here's what you can find online. There's no wait lists. We don't have to fulfill eligibility criteria. Get started on your road trip, basically. So, actually, one thing I should mention too is that we do a lot of education, obviously, in our clinic, not just presentations like this and invited workshops, but a lot of school assemblies, for example, a lot of training with different agencies if they want to become an affiliate, but also the Leaky 101 course. It's a 7-week course that we've been running since the inception of the Break Shop 10 years ago, and the OTN, you probably wouldn't know what that is in BC because the O stands for Ontario, but it's the Ontario Telehealth Network. It's basically video conferencing, and our system's called OTN. I'm sure you have VTN or something like that. But video conferencing has become so ubiquitous anymore that we offer a lot of our education, a lot of our training virtually as well now too. And so we run this course a couple times a year. We have sessions archived on our website. But if at some future point, I know there's an agency mentioned tonight that in the introduction, if anyone wanted to be a remote site for a course, one for one fall session or one spring session, what have you, contact us, and that's something that can be set up. The presentation that I was asked to do tonight is basically week one of this course. And so if you like what you hear tonight, if you want more, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and whether it's on our website or live over the internet, then you can get more. So, as I say, I won't be happy until we get everything online that we can offer in person. My favorite, let me just bring up the website here. My favorite feedback that I get on our website is when a family comes up to me when I'm presenting in Ontario and they say something to me along the lines of, well, we've never met, but actually we were on your wait list 2 years ago. We were having a lot of difficulties with our son. He was 11 at the time, and we didn't know where to turn. We learned about your clinic, and so we contacted CPID, and the intake department told us there was a wait list, but while we were waiting, they pointed us to your website. And so, we went through the, oh, I got it. Let me put it on the home page again here so you can see all the different options. We went to your resource page, and we learned about good organizations like the TSFC and Join, but we also found a lot of good books and videos that you recommend that we looked into. You had a lot of good strategy documents in there that were easy to read and helped us at home enough that we shared them with the school and made things better at school too. We watched some of your online stream presentations. Your frequently asked questions section really ended up being more like a virtual consult for us. All the questions that we wanted to have asked in person, you actually had already been asked by someone at some point. You'd already put the answers up there, so we got all the answers that we needed. We went through some of your treatment for some of the different leaky breaks online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then we canceled our appointment. So, like I said at the very beginning, that's the beginning of the end for me. As soon as those referrals stopped coming in, then I got off to move up to Victoria and do it again. So, all right. So, as I said, the presentation I was asked to do tonight, it's really sort of an introduction, an invitation to our model. I call this presentation Leaky Breaks, what they are, and those are really, literally the two main goals of the evening. I'm dressed like an idiot here. Why is he in overalls? Why is he talking about leaky brakes and brake shop? We don't work at Midas, but we're here for our kids. What's going on? I need to explain this model. I need to help you understand really why we decided to call the clinic what we did, because even locally, a lot of physicians were scratching their heads at first. They were making referrals to the bake shop. Everyone was very confused. So I need to paint this picture for you, help you to understand really what are we talking when we talk about leaky brakes. Because even if I continue to talk this fast without taking a breath, which is likely, in 2 hours I still couldn't possibly hope to tell you everything we know, even about one of the disorders that more often are walking through doors, let alone all the different disorders that people are probably here to hear a little bit about. So in a presentation like this, I'm not even going to try. Rather than focusing on diagnostic manuals and going through all the research, everything we know about each of these disorders, making your head spin, I want to focus on this big picture. I want to focus on what we call here the leaky breaks, the commonalities that run through all these different disorders. Because it's not by accident that all these disorders tend to co-occur with such frequency. They're basically variations on a theme. Guys like me come along and slap different labels on it, but really there's common threads running through them. As I say, they follow similar rules, and so it's that stuff, the leaky brake aspect that I want to focus on, because then if I do that well, then even though I didn't spend all sorts of time talking about ADHD or OCD or Tourette's, hopefully whatever disorder you're here to understand a little bit more, you'll get. And then of course there's the what they ain't component, because one of the reasons that I spend as much time as I do doing education for the brake shops, because these disorders, they'll fool you. lot of paradoxical, non-intuitive aspects to these disorders and how they present. So if you don't know anything about these disorders, or if you don't know your child, your student, your spouse, what have you, has these disorders, then it's very easy to get off track. It's very easy to see a lot of this stuff on the surface as bratty little SOB pushing the envelope on it, that so-and-so needs a good swift kick. But that's really not what's happening at all. And that's part of this paradigm shift that I was talking about. That, again, I'm tertiary care. You've been to hell and back by the time you walk through my door. So, whether you're a fried parent, a pissed off teacher, a burnt out social worker, whoever you are, you're basically coming to my door saying, we've tried everything with this kid. We've thrown everything out of the kitchen sink and nothing's working. In fact, maybe things are getting worse rather than better. And so, again, the point of tonight, the point of our approach is not to belabor this particular kitchen sink. Because you probably all had this kitchen sink rammed down your throats by this point. It's not working. There's no doubting, the intentions of any of the audience members who take the time to come up to one of my presentations. I mean, they're not bad people, they're well-intentioned people that want to help kids, but their well-intentioned ideas are blowing up their well-intentioned faces. Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And so you're working so hard to try and help this kid, and yet you've ended up in a place that you never expected or wanted to be. And so, again, with tonight then, I'm not going to be telling you about how you're just stupid, you weren't doing the sink right, or about how you're lazy, you should just try harder with the sink. Or you're a bit of a dullard and you forgot to put a couple of things in this sink. Now, you guys, I already know, you guys have probably already managed to cram through Herculean effort things into the sink that I didn't even think were possible to get in there. So enough of that sink. I need to get your home sink. And that's the paradigm shift. That's a different mind frame. And you have to understand, what's really going on with these kids. I'm not here to sell quick fixes or easy solutions or anything like that. What I am going to give you is going to work better than what you're doing. You're going to accomplish more in less time with less effort, and not because I'm brilliant and you're not or anything like that. Simply because if you finally start addressing what these issues really are, rather than what we've been assuming they were, or we were led to believe they were for all this time, of course it's going to work better. So this model is not rocket science. We haven't come up with some brilliant idea in the break shop that no one's ever thought of before. If we have something we can brag about in the break shop, I think it's that we've taken a lot of really good work that a lot of really good people have done over the years, and we packaged it well. We've made it consumer-friendly and easily digestible to even some pretty young minds. We're not dumbing down any messages. We're just diluting the language a little bit so that even, I mentioned we do school assemblies, even some pretty young kids that can wrap their heads around some pretty complex stuff if we just come at them with something they can wrap their heads around. I'm talking with professionals tomorrow. I don't really anticipate during question and answer sessions that I'll have to sweat too hard. But I'll tell you, I routinely get stumped in question and answer sessions with kids in grade 4, where they'll ask some question that my only possible response can be, "Wow, that was a good question." Doctors actually only thought to ask that question last year. They just got a grant, they're working on it, I'll have to get back to you. So, it's pretty clear from that to me that again, these kids can really understand the stuff if we give them an opportunity to. So really, all I'm talking about with leaky breaks and this whole get up ahead here, I mean, it's simply, whether you're talking about a tic disorder, or ADHD, or an anxiety disorder like OCD, or oppositional defiance, and rage, and sensory processing issues, all these different collections of things that come through our doors, what they all have in common is simply that these kids have a hard time stopping themselves. That's it. I mean, as I say, it's not difficult, but we tend to make it difficult, I think. People like me are the worst offenders because, we love our jargon. And if you're a parent blogging, you might be complaining about how your child has no self-restraint. If you're a psychologist, like I am, you might be writing some ponderous 14-page report where you're describing in excruciating detail the child's lack of cognitive control. If you're a psychiatrist, you may be confiding in the parents that you believe their child suffers from inhibition failures. If you're a neurologist, you're looking at the brain scan saying, well, clearly your son has faulty circuitry in the cortical striatal thalamal cortical path of the basal ganglia. Well, what the hell does all this mean? They're all saying the same thing. These kids have a hard time stopping. And if it's that simple of a concept, why don't we just keep the language simple? Because stigma and social distance starts with fear, starts with not understanding, unpredictability, and standing up here using multisyllabic words so everyone walks away not understanding this stuff any more than they did before, but just thinking, wow, he knows a lot of big words. That's where stigma starts. And so let's avoid that and just keep the language, keep the understanding simple. Actually, one other thing I'll say here is that not only does our model really help, I think, with, as I say, helping people understand what's going on, but it also really helps with that switch to the new perspective I was talking about. When we start talking about, successful ways of helping to ameliorate some of these problems, some of these symptoms, as opposed to what you were doing before, because everyone understands leaky brakes in a car, and so we can use that example, that parallel all the way through to help some light bulbs go off, help people to understand, oh, that's why this wasn't working over here and why I should be trying this over here instead. For example, if you've got leaky brakes on your actual car, does that make it a naughty car? Of course not. Does it mean that mommy car or daddy car, didn't rear Junior properly? It's all their fault. They instilled a bad attitude in your car? No, of course not. If you've got leaky brakes in your car, do you spend any time, standing out your front lawn with your voice raised, wagging your finger at it, leaning at the ride at it? Of course not, because that's not going to accomplish anything. Well, no, sorry, it will accomplish something. Your neighbor's talking about you. But it won't accomplish what you need it to accomplish, which is, let's get the car to stop better. Do you withhold the new oil from that car until it shapes up and starts respecting your authority at stop signs? No! That's just going to cause more problems. Now the engine's seized. And of course, if you thought this way about cars, you'd probably be up until 4 in the morning tearing your hair out about your car the way you often do with a child. Asking yourself all sorts of deep, existential questions like, why does my car hate me so much? Why won't my car just listen to me when I tell it to stop? What about me? What quality is it in my makeup that makes me so fundamentally such a crappy driver anyway? I mean, we don't get lost in these muddy waters with cars because, again, we understand cars have brakes, and it's not a big leap for even, as I say, young kids to understand that just as cars can have brakes, people have brakes too up here in the brain, and just like car brakes can be leaky, and that doesn't say anything about the caliber or character of the car. It just means that there's something under the hood that needs a little tweaking. Same is true for people too. Whether you're a kid or whether you're one of us adults that grow up into a big version of leaky brakes too. And so as I say, we don't waste any time with that with our cars. We simply book an appointment, get our car into the brake shop the next day, up on the hoist, and do a bit of a brake adjustment, and then life's better. Well, it ends up, as I say, the same is true for these kids with leaky brakes and the adults they become. They need a brake shop too. And so our model really is a very parallel model. I mean, we're very solution focused. We're not looking to point fingers when people come to the clinic, figure out whose fault is it that all this is going on. More often than not, almost exclusively when families are coming into our service, the common theme is that they're all on the same side already, and they just don't know it yet. They have a mutual enemy. They have a common foe that they need to understand better and gang up on, and then things are going to go a little bit better. And that's the leaky brake. That's the skill deficit, as opposed to the brat hypothesis. It's not me against him. It's us against this leaky brake. And now things start to flow a little bit better. So. We take this language and follows all the way through our model. We don't do assessments in our clinic. We do all points checks. We get you up on the hoist. We figure out where your leaky brakes are. We don't do treatment. We do brake adjustments. And once we've done that, again, driving out of the garage, surprise, surprise, life's better. So again, regardless of what language, what semantic game you want to play, leaky brakes, impulse control issues. dysregulation of the caudate nucleus, whatever language you want to grab on. Basically what it comes down to is that it's kind of handy to have a pause in between information coming in and the response to it. I mean, we all have knee-jerk ideas pop into our heads of how we can respond to a particular situation, right? But if you're anything like me, most of my knee-jerk ideas, not my best ones. So I imagine it'd be kind of handy to have this mental workbench here to think, well, I have a mental workbench, I just don't have good breaks to utilize it well. And so it's handy to be able to insert a pause in between so you can plot your information down, step back, and do a processing mode. Because if you can insert that pause, you can ask yourself all sorts of great questions about what's lying here in your mental workbench. You can ask yourself things like, well, do I have enough information yet? Or would I be making an assumption at this point? Do I not have copy? This is one option that occurred to me of how to respond to the situation, but are there other options I can consider? What are the pros and cons for each of those options? And what happened last time I used option 3? Did I get suspended for it? So let's ixnay option 3. Or, did I get a cookie for it? So let's bump option 3 up to the front of the line. Who's in the room? How do I want to come off to him or her in this particular situation? I mean, there's so much you can do to basically clean your response up for public consumption before you fire it on down the tubes for the world to see and judge, if you've got a good braking system. But if you don't, if you're a reaction machine, if, as soon as something pops in your head, it's out your mouth 0.47 seconds later, or you're acting on it 0.47 seconds later, you're probably going to get yourself in a boatload of trouble. Might be coming in to see me. Again, not rocket science. I bet you already do this stuff. Maybe you never really thought about it in these terms in this particular way before, but this is such a pervasive concept in our culture. It's hard to avoid. Like, if you've ever described someone's personality before, whether you realize it or not, you're making comment on the braking system. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because there's really two ends of the spectrum, right? There's folks where their mental workbench, they're exceptional at putting things on it and great braking system. And then there's the folks down here where, too many goals are getting past the goalpost, so to speak. And so, if you're up on this end of the spectrum, again, there's lots of language you might describe them as, but basically, they're very good at deciding what they're going to keep in here and what they're going to display for the rest of the world out here. And so, really, there can be a completely different internal world than what anyone suspects. But then there's the other end of the spectrum, as I say, where, not by choice, you're not able to utilize good breaks, and so you're really wearing yourself on your sleeve. She doesn't have any airs about her. She's very upfront. What you see is what you get. All this different language to describe folks down this end of the spectrum. Now, we're all born down here. None of us have good breaks when we first pop up. But the idea is that as we grow and develop over time, we start to move our way up this spectrum. And in our society, that's a good thing. I mean, in North America, in 2013 North America, we are all about a good braking system. I would argue that we have a rather unhealthy, myopic preoccupation at this point in our society with style over substance, with looking the right way rather than being the right way. And there's so many. If you want to be at the front of the class in our society, literally or figuratively, you want to have the best braking system out there. You want to get further up to this end of the spectrum than anyone else, faster than anyone else, and that's going to be what gets you the goods. And as I said, there's so many different ways that this comes out. How we define maturity in our society is completely synonymous with how well do your brakes work. Now, that's not necessarily true well, it's not true at all in a lot of other societies. But in our society, maturity isn't about what reaction are you having to a particular situation. It's what reaction are you showing to a particular situation. Two very different things. Ditto for professionalism. If you're very good at playing the emperor with no clothes game, then you're going to get further in your professional life than folks that are noticing, hey, that guy's neat. Think about our pastimes, our entertainment. I think one of the reasons that poker is probably the most popular and enduringly popular card game in our society is because, unlike a lot of different games, it's not a game of chance. It's actually a game of who's got the biggest braking system. that, you know, if you've got the best braking system sitting at the table, it doesn't matter if you have the worst hand of cards there. You're still going to go home with all the chips because you're going to be able to bluff really well. You're going to have an excellent poker face. You're going to have your cards kept close to your chest. You're going to be hard to read. And so because you don't have any tells, people are going to believe you got a stronger hand than you do. They'll fold and you win even though your hand was terrible. Think about our must-see television. You know, it's always about conspiracies and manipulation of people. And you know, does Sally really know that Jesse's two-time over here? But really, you know, that, you know, all this kind of stuff that we revel in. It's because it's a spectator sport. You know, who's gonna you know, be better at lying to the next guy. You know, I find it funny actually how often these kids that come into the break shop, you know, with their files this thick, you know, amongst the litany of complaints and concerns, they're always called manipulative. Oh, it's manipulative. You need good breaks to be manipulative. You can't be wearing yourself on your sleeve if you're trying to sell a false story over here. Yet, truth be told, these kids that we're talking about tonight, they can't manipulate themselves out of a wet paper bag. The only reason we think of them as manipulative is because they're so crappy at it, we keep catching them in it. If you go home and your 4-year-old standing there at the door covered from head to toe in chocolate saying, "I didn't eat the cake," okay, sure, he's trying to lie to you, his heart's in it. But you know, his brain system ain't really backing him up, is it? The true manipulator in that situation is his older brother who's already had a shower and is hiding under his bed. But we don't think of him as manipulative because he's actually good at it. You know, the funny thing is that, you know, this doesn't have to be just a conversation about, you know, timeouts or detentions or anything either. I mean, our whole justice system really needs a sober second look from this perspective because, you know, we may think our system is designed to punish bad behavior, but it's not. It is designed to punish poorly executed bad behavior. If you're good at it, that's okay. So, and as I say, so many different ways this comes up. Reality television, Survivor. I mean, our kids are the ones, they get voted off the island the first week. You know what I mean? You know, again, must-see TV because we can't wait to see just all the machinations, the calculated scheming going on. If I want to be the last one on the island, I need to come over here and convince you. You and I are going to be allies. We're going to team up. We're going to be friends to the end and get everyone else. And then I need to come over here and completely screw her over with you. And if no one sees me coming, if I'm better at that than anyone else, you'll give me $1 million. Pretty clearly, there is a very high premium on having a good braking system in our society. And again, you knew this. Maybe you hadn't thought of it in this way before, but if you're a parent, if you're an older sister, if you're a big brother, if you're a teacher, at some point when you've been talking with young, developing children at this end of the spectrum, you've communicated exactly what I've just said up here, whether you realize it or not. You said things like, suck it in, keep a stiff upper lip, put your best foot forward, put on a happy face, keep your powder dry, never let them see you sweat, keep your stick on the ice, don't go there. Too much information. Overshare. All of this terminology is just basically another way of saying, look, what you want to do, what you want to say, how you want to react in this situation, it might be perfectly valid, but it's not going to incur you much advantage. It's not going to get you to the head of the class. So contain yourself. Reel yourself in, hold your horses. Do what you need to do to win. And, you know, kids are bright little beasties, and so they internalize this message pretty quickly. They start working their way up this spectrum as fast as their burgeoning little frontal lobes will let them. But every once in a while, there's a bit of a hitch in that plan. Of course, that's why I'm out here tonight to talk to all you fine folks. This is the way I heard the brain described one time at CPID. Being like a reptilian weenie wrapped in a cortical blanket. Pretty silly way to describe the brain, but you know, it actually works really well for our purposes tonight. In painting this picture for you that I'm endeavoring to paint, it makes a couple of points that I want to emphasize to you. For one thing, that example, it really points out we don't really have a brain, we do kind of have two brains. Excuse me, we have our reptilian weenies, we have our cortical brains. And they are very different brains, very much across purposes most of the time. Our reptilian meaning, this area of the brain is devoid of a braking system. It's very reactive in the moment, hedonistic. Freud would have called this the id. And of course, 100 years later, what does Freud know? It's easy to pick on. And instead, we talk about, the limbic system, or the midbrain, or what have you. But again, we're caught in a semantic game again. The concept's the same. We've got an area of the brain that really just follows what B.F. Skinner, the father of behaviorism, coined the law of effect a number of years ago. And basically, 2 rules to the law of effect, and they are: if it feels good, do it. If it don't feel good, don't do it no more. And that's about the extent of the thinking of the reptilian week. So it's not going to be able to handle things like delayed gratification, impression management. It's not going to have a clue about time management. If you were to talk to the reptilian weenie about time management, it would stare at you blankly and say, well, yeah, there's 2 times. Now and not now. And given the choice, I want it now. Because I have no idea how long not now is. 10 minutes, 10 years, it's all the same. It's just not now. I'm in the moment. I'm pressed against the windshield of life. I'm noticing crowds that flies on reactively by me. That's about it. So obviously, if we're just running around all day with our reptilian weenies hanging out, that's going to cause a lot of problems. So that's where this other fellow comes in. That's where the cortical bund comes in. This area of the brain is the braking system. It's sort of the wet blanket party pooper area of the brain. Again, if Freud called the reptilian weenie the id, he'd be calling this the superego. And again, we poo-poo and dismiss Freud, and instead we talk about executive functioning, or cerebral cortex. But again, he might have had wonky language, but he was bang on to how the brain was designed, a century ago. There's this area of the brain that's just sort of got its party hat on, saying, "Yeah, man, do it." And there's this other area of the brain over here that's learned what the crisis plan is. It's learned, where you're supposed to go after school. It's learned the top 10 stupidest things to say to your principal's face. And it's constantly trying to put the kibosh on all this fun the reptilian weenie's trying to get. Mom's watching. Let's not do it. And so you see this interplay, and you see the cross purposes, and you see how, if one of these is winning more of the duels than the other, how you're going to end up on one of these ends of the spectrum I was talking about a little earlier. If your cortical bund is, your horse every time, coming in consistently, then you're going to be up here, very hard to read and contain and reserve. And calculate and two-faced and whatever language you want to use. But if that reptilian weenie's, the one that's the win in the day more often than not, you can be down here, very thin-skinned, reactive, and rather than being unflappable, you'll be very flappable and easy to read down here. Or anywhere sort of in between here. So that's one point I wanted to make about the brain using that example. The other point I wanted to make, having said that, is what a dumb way to design a brain. I mean, who came up with this? A couple of things come to mind. First, isn't there a better use of our resources? Than constantly kind of being at war with ourselves. Why do we always have to be of 2 minds about everything? We've probably used that phrase before and never realized just how literal it actually was. But the other thing is remember what I was saying a few minutes ago about our dysfunctional society, or 2013 North America. Boy, we know which horse needs to be coming in first all the time. And there's a heck of a premium on it. The stakes are high. We really need to make sure that this guy never wins the day. And it's not like we just have one braking system. We have numerous braking systems over numerous facets of ourselves. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, an exhaustive list of all the different things we have braking systems over. But when it comes to the brake shop, when it comes to the disorders that we typically deal with, and I'll be talking about tonight, these are really our usual suspects, to say. And so, over our movements and voices, they're just over our bodies. We've all learned that an infinite number of different, movements and voices we can make with our bodies, but how appropriate at all times. So pretty darn important we have a braking system there to tell us when to do what, for how long, when to cut it out and move on to something else. Ditto for different actions we've learned, our quote-unquote impulses. If anyone here ever seen the movie Liar Liar, starring Jim Carrey? You know, if you haven't, you know, Jim Carrey certainly is an illustrious member of the Leaky Break Club. When it looks like, when you see him on TV and you're like, wow, you know, he doesn't look, it looks like he can't stop. No, you're right, he can't stop. He has leaky breaks. And, you know, I met some of his former teachers. They all went prematurely gray. But you know, if you haven't seen the movie Liar Liar, it's a stroke of genius. I mean, it's a funny movie, but I mean, the real genius to me is how Jim Carrey really, you know, brings this unwitting audience into his leaky break world for a couple hours. You know, walk around and see what it's like. And if you've not seen the movie, the basic premise is that Jim Carrey stars this very hoity-toity lawyer up at this end of the spectrum, you know, straight-laced, hard to read, and he has curse put on, where for 24 hours he's plummeted down to this end of the spectrum. So for 24 hours, you know, anything that pops into his head, he's saying it or doing it. So I want you to think about that in your own lives for a second. Really think about it. What if for the next 24 hours, every thought that pops into your head, you either said it or you did it. Where would you be by 7:45? Probably in jail. Or lying face down in the ditch someplace, or, you know, swimming naked in the freezing cold ocean. Like, it wouldn't be pretty, would it? So, pretty darn important. We've got a good braking system there, too. We also need good brakes over our attention. And so, you know, at any given time, you know, there's just a buffet table of things that you could be paying attention to. I mean, just right now, you could be reading over the slides. You could be watching me pace back and forth. You could be listening to someone, you know, talking behind you. You could be, you know, checking your phone, an email. I mean, you could be, you know, looking for the closest exits because, you know, you're sick of me yapping on and on and on. I mean, there's so many different places that you could be attending to, and so you need a good braking system to really help you when you decide what's important for you right now to pay attention to and what's not. So you can turn off these different competing things for your attention. So, you know, I've already read the slides. I'm going to put the brakes on that. I hate that chick behind me. I couldn't care too. That's what she's saying. So I'm going to put the brakes on her. You know, I checked my email a second ago. I don't need to check it again. Put the brakes on all these things so that you can have 100% of your focus on the thing that does matter to you right now. And you know, when your priorities change, then you can put the brakes on that and shift that focus over to someplace else. I remember being in a room full of kids with ADHD a few years ago and wanting to explain this particular concept to them. And so I used my laser pointer as an example. And you know, just as we talk about you know, the Leaky Break Club in our clinic. I mean, you're not diagnosed in our clinic, you join the club. So just as we talk about, you know, being a Leaky Break Club member in our club, we also talk about the normies. Of course, the normies are all their neurotypical peers. They're the same age folks that, you know, their braking systems are developing just fine, thank you very much. And so I used my laser pointer and I said to the kids, I want you to pretend that this laser pointer, this is a normie's brain, okay? And the light that comes out from this laser pointer, that's like a normie's attention, okay? So if I'm a normie and I want to pay attention to something, I've got great control here, you know, with my brain of deciding when I'm going to pay attention to what, for how long, and I'm going to cut it and move on to something else. So let's say that, you know, I'm sick of my own voice, I'm looking for the exit signs now. So I decide I want to focus on that exit sign over there. So I can decide where it's going to go, when I'm going to turn on, and when I turn my attention on, bang, there it is. The light, when I turn on, doesn't just diffuse all over the place. It's this tightly focused beam that just goes precisely where I want it. Then if I don't want to look at that anymore, if I want to look at the speaker up there, I can do that. If I then, you know, want to, I don't know, look at the lectern, I can do that. Look at all this wonderful control I have over my attention. At which point, one of the kids in the room blurted out. He didn't stick his hand up because he had ADHD. He said to me, my attention's not at all like that laser pointer. It's more like a strobe light. There's an example of, you know, you give the kid some information, they'll say it more eloquently than you ever could. The issue here is not, you know, having a reservoir of attention that's lower than everyone else's. It's really more of an attention regulation issue. I mean, I mentioned the term ADHD a few minutes ago. What a horrible name for it. I mean, we came up with a name for it long before we actually learned what was going on, which is a shame. And the DSM-5, which just came, the DSM is sort of the diagnostic Bible for folks like me. The newest edition just came out. I know Russell Barkley, the guru in ADHD literature, he was really pushing to have ADHD renamed to focused attention disorder, which I was certainly cheering for that. He didn't win, unfortunately. It's still called ADHD, but it's much more accurate to what's happening here. If anything, we should call it attention abundance disorder. Yeah. I mean, it's like a kid. It's like taking a high-powered firehouse, turning on full blast, handing it to a 4-year-old and saying, "There, put the fire out right there." You might get a little water there, but it's just spraying everything. And you know very well, if you work with kids with ADHD or have a child with ADHD, perhaps at one point, you were sitting down with Johnny and giving him your 12-minute lecture on 101 perfectly valid reasons why you shouldn't punch your best friend in the nose. And as you wrap up and conclude and ask if there's any questions, Johnny looks at you and says, "There are 57 screws in the door." Okay. Clearly he wasn't in an attentional vacuum. I mean, he was paying attention to something. It just wasn't quite pointed in the direction you were hoping. And maybe in the direction that you wanted. You can also have leaky breaks over your senses. These two are pretty similar, except this one's more external, this one's more internal. This is more about figuring out what you're going to pay attention to when for how long out here, whereas this one's more about sorting through internally. What am I going to pay attention to when for how long? When am I going to move on to something else? In terms of your sensory input. Whether you realize it or not, you're being barraged right now. We all are, 24/7. It's a relentless barrage of sensory input. And if you're not aware of that, great, good for you. That means you're a normie in this regard. You've got good breaks over your senses. But if you don't have good breaks over your senses, you're acutely aware of what I'm talking about. Because it's not just all the different things I mentioned earlier around the room that you could be looking at, paying attention to, but it's also the ambient temperature in the room. It's also the feeling of your rear end on the chair. It's also the tag in your shirt, or the seams in your socks, or the belt around your waist. It's the taste of that, Timmy's lemonade still lingering on your tongue before you came in. It's the smell of the BO of the guy next to you. Whatever. It's just, you need a good braking system here too to decide, what's relevant right now. The itchy sweater or the calculus exam. And obviously you're not an idiot. You know which ones take priority, but if you don't have a braking system backing you up, then you're going to keep on thinking about the prickly sweater and the 18 billion other sensory things that you can't control, and so you're very quickly going to get overwhelmed. You're going to get overloaded, you're going to get overstimulated, and very much like this one, you're going to be very unfocused, you'll be distracted and off task. The final one I want to mention on our non-exhaustive list here is overthoughts. So I'm going to assume that you're all pretty busy people. You probably have a lot of roles, wear a lot of different hats. So you could be sitting here right now thinking, boy, this guy must be lurking in the bushes at home because he's just describing my kid with tea. Or you could be thinking, what a waste of my time. I wonder what episode of Seinfeld I'm missing for this claptrap. You could also be thinking, did I lock my car door before I came in? When am I going to have time to make those lunches for tomorrow? Are my kids at home right now killing each other as we speak? There's so many different places your head can be going. So again, we need a braking system here. We need, something to turn off that cognitive direction when it's redundant, when it's superfluous, when it's anxiety provoking. You don't want to think about that for the next 40 years. So you shove it back, recesses in your brain, and put brakes around it. So that you again now can put 100% of your cognitive energy into whatever thought is relevant for you. I mentioned lock my car door. There's nothing inherent to that thought that's dysfunctional. It's just it's all about context, right? When you're getting out of your car, if that thought pops in mind, gee, lock the car door, perfectly appropriate. So you turn around and you check the door's locked, yes indeedy, and that feedback goes back up to the braking system in your brain, and if he's earning his keep, and he says, thank you very much, I'm glad we've solved that whole of the car door locked episode. I'm going to put the brakes on that thought now, because you're about to go inside, you're going to have a lot of new thoughts thrown at you, and you need the room on the mental workbench. Well, fine and dandy if you've got a good braking system over your thoughts. But if you don't, thought keeps nagging at you. And it's not a memory issue. It's not that you forgot to lock the door. It's like a cognitive itch. I mean, you're walking away from the car, but the thought's still there. You're like, oh, I can turn the door. You know, fine. You go around, you check the door, and even knowing it's locked, just hoping that'll scratch the itch. But no, then you get a little further this way, but now the thoughts are like, but did you check all the doors? Oh, for goodness, you know, check all the doors. You're walking away again. Well, you know, did you check the trunk? Oh my God. Here, I'll hit the little button there. Hear the beep, you know, everything. Oh, but does that beep block everything? Oh my God. Maybe you're not in here yet because you're checking your car for the 62nd time. Hoping like hell that this will be the time that the braking system over your thoughts will finally get off the pot and do its job and wake up and give you a little bit of internal peace. Now, I'm gonna date myself a little bit here because I'm going to say that when I first started doing these presentations, I was describing this particular leaky brake. I would talk about like a skipping record. Now kids are staring blankly. So my new example for the 21st century of this particular leaky brake is it's like an internet pop-up ad. You know, these intrusive thoughts, they keep intruding into your brain the way, you know, that Cialis ad keeps popping up on your screen 40 times every 15 minutes as you're trying to get to work done. And, you know, it has some of the same effects. I mean, it's a bit frustrating and aggravating. It wastes time and distracts you. You have to perform a ritual each time it happens. You have to reach over your mouse and click the X to get out of your way so you can get back on task. It's maybe a bit anxiety-provoking. I mean, you didn't think there was anything wrong with your erections before. But you start to wonder. You know, maybe my computer knows something I don't. So I mean, you can see that, how any one of these brakes, if it's not firing the way it should, just, you know, how much of a pain that's going to be. So imagine if a couple of these brakes were leaky, the neurological pandemonium. Imagine if none of these brakes worked particularly well. The chaos, the cacophony up there would be too much to bear. Thank goodness we don't have to think about that, right? We've got this cortical button looking out for us, right? So, you know, we're safe. We don't have to go there. We can all go home and not think about this anymore because this guy has our back, right? Of course, you know where I'm going with this. What happens if the brakes break? Because they do a lot. Again, not by any stretch of the imagination an exhaustive list. But suffice it to say, you know, if there's any kind of insult to the brain, often the first thing that goes is the braking system. And as that old saying goes, you know, when the cat's away. So, you know, we're back to the skill deficit idea I was talking about before. You know, the reptilian weenie's off his leash, right? And so, you know, we're not talking in this model about a kid who doesn't know better. We're not talking about a kid who isn't motivated. You know, he's doing the neurological equivalent of seeing the stop sign coming up. It's not that he's stupid. He knows what a stop sign's for. He knows what he's supposed to do to stop the car and hit that brake. He sees the cop hidden around the corner waiting to see if he's going to come to a full, complete stop. He sees the little old lady crossing in front of him. You know, I love little old ladies. I wouldn't want to hit her. You know, he sees the plate glass window across the street. Watch, that'd be expensive to crash into. It's not about motivation or any of these things. I mean, this is a kid, using this car example, on the neurological level, he's got all the reasons in the world, all the intelligence in the world, all the motivation in the world to stop. He goes to hit that brake pedal, and nothing happens. Brake pedal hits the floor. And he goes through the stop sign anyway. The cop sees it all. You know, the old lady's a hood ornament now. You know that that plate glass window is shattered. I mean, there's lots of trouble, but you know, none of it had to do with a poor choice. Just like with the car, we're talking about a mechanical issue here, something under the hood that needs tweaking. And really, this scenario, there's two different things that can happen. I mean, you know, if this is Susie here and this is Johnny, I mean, we know girls, you know, tend to mature faster than boys, so you know, maybe at any given time, saying, you know, grade 4, you know, Susie, her ability to put the brakes on, she's a little bit ahead of Johnny here. But, you know, Johnny will catch up. He'll eventually have his, you know, growth spurt, and they'll both get to where they need to be. I mean, this kind of delay is not, I'm assuming, I'm betting why all of you are giving up one of your evenings to be here tonight. And certainly, those aren't the kids I flew all the way out here to talk about. The kids I'm here to talk about is poor Johnny, where when he started out down here, he got the same message as anyone else. Suck it in, stiff upper lip, yada yada. He's not an idiot, he knows what he's supposed to do, and so he's working his way up the spectrum as fast as he can. He hits a wall. And he just can't get any further. And Susie here, of course, is moving on without him. And the gap is widening. She's having all sorts of successes now that Johnny here could never dream of having. And as this discrepancy becomes more and more apparent, it's clear to the adults around Johnny that there's some kind of problem he's addressing. Now, I know tonight it's predominantly parents I'm talking to, but on Friday I'm going to be talking mostly with teachers. When I do that, more often than not, I suspect it will happen on Friday too, that at this point, as I describe this model, all the heads in the crowd are going to be like bobbleheads. Because if you're an educator, if you're a psychoeducational consultant, this is a very familiar model that I just described here. I just described an intellectual disability, as far as they're concerned. What we used to call mental retardation. Basically, any time a psychologist, psychoeducational consultant is saying that Johnny's IQ isn't what everyone else's is, this is how they describe it. Everyone starts down here at the same point, and cognitive functioning develops. But every once in a while, someone hits a wall. They get impeded from going any further. They're stumped. They're retarded in spot. It's just a literal term. Before it became got grabbed by the bullies and made all non-politically correct and everything. It was just describing literally what was happening. Mentally, these kids have been stumped. They've been stopped. They've been retarded from moving further. And everyone else is moving on without them, the gap's widening, and we better identify these poor kids and help them out. Now, obviously I haven't been talking about IQ. I've been talking about something different. I've been talking about your ability to self-regulate. That just like IQ starts out down here, where we all start at the same point, our ability to put the brakes on when we're first born are all in the same place. And just as you can hit a wall in terms of your cognitive functioning, you can hit a wall in terms of your ability to self-regulate too. Now, if I was to try and take all the research that's been done on all these different disorders, Tourette's, and ADHD, and OCD, and yada yada yada, if I was to take all these disorders and try to summarize in a single sentence everything we've learned in the last 15 to 20 years about Tourette Syndrome and tic disorders, which are simply the leaky brakes over loose noises, or ADHD, which are simply leaky brakes over your impulses or your attention, or obsessive compulsive disorder, which is leaky brake over those thoughts that keep intruding and disrupting. If I was to try and just cram all that into one sentence, I think that's the best sentence. In the last 15, 20 years, we've learned there's more than one type of developmental disability. In fact, with the new DSM-5 that's come out, it's nice because our diagnostic nosology is finally catching up with a lot of really good work that's been done since the DSM-4 came out. That mental retardation, of course, isn't called mental retardation anymore, but it's also not just called developmental disability, the way we've often been coining it over the last few years. It's called an intellectual developmental disability. And it's important to put that distinction in because we realize just saying developmental disability is too vague. It can be misleading because there are more than, it's more than just cognitive functioning that develops over time. In fact, if you were to go to a conference tomorrow on all these different disorders, Tourette's and ADHD, OCD, etc., it would be called a conference on Tourette's and ADHD and OCD. It would be called a symposium on neurodevelopmental disabilities, which is a term that a lot of folks like myself have been adopting over the last few years. And again, one of the exciting things that's happened with the new DSM, which is that the new category, and it's called neurodevelopmental disabilities. And one of these disorders I've been talking about tonight, they were already in the DSM, but maybe they were under behavioral problem, or they were under anxiety. They've been moved. They're now collected under this new category, neurodevelopmental disabilities. So that's great. That's step one. We're able to give these kids a diagnosis now that's more reflective of what's actually going on. We're getting into this other sync now in terms of diagnosis. Step two, though, is going to be probably more important. Step two is we've got to get that neurodevelopmental term into the school system. We need it to be a new designation. We need, when these kids get identified, when it's clear as day that Johnny's lagging behind Susie, we need to make sure we're putting him in the right sync. Because, you know, I don't know what all the different labels are for identifying exceptionalities and giving extra assistance and such out here in BC, but I know in Ontario, it's a system that needs revision because, well, we have a developmental category, but we can't put these kids in it. Because, as you probably well know, I mean, these leaky breaks, or sorry, these developmental disabilities don't all go along together. That oftentimes these kids with leaky breaks, these kids with neurodevelopmental disabilities, are at the head of the class cognitively. Like they're not mentally retarded, as we would have said many years ago. They're smarter than the average bear. You know, they've got this discrepancy even within themselves, where they, better than anyone else in the room, know precisely what they need to be doing right now, and what's going to happen if they don't. And yet they're at the end of the classroom in terms of their ability to actually execute that knowledge, to make the behaviors match their intentions. You know, what more fundamental loss of control can you envision in your life than your behaviors not matching your intentions? And these kids live there. I mean, that's just a life definition for them. I mean, I've lost count of how many times kids have come in my office saying things to me like, I think I had a devil in my head. I think God hates me. Or one boy, he was a Simpsons fan, and he stretched out his face. He said to me, you know, it's like I wake up each day trying to be Ned Flanders, but somehow I keep coming off like Homer Simpson. You know, it's a very frustrating, very anxiety-provoking way to live. And you know, when you start understanding that with these kids, you start to understand a few more of these sort of secondary emotional reactions. Like if your intentions never match your behaviors, if you're on a runaway train every day, you know, knowing that's your stop, pressed against the glass, watching your stop going by, thinking, oh crap, I'm going to be in trouble. You know, aren't you going to be paranoid? Aren't you going to be resentful of people that can stop? That maybe even aren't as smart as you, but they were able to stop better than you. And so it looks like they're smarter. You know, the anger, the free-floating anxiety. We live in life in a minefield. You never quite know when, you know, what's going to blow up in your face, how, but you're pretty damn sure that, you know, your leaky braking system is going to screw you by the end of the day. It's just a matter of, you know, when and how bad the punishment is going to be this time. And so it's pretty understandable that going through that stop sign, you know, 14 times a day, you know, for the last 16 years, you know, a lot of how these kids present. Once you understand what's really going on, once you understand, you know, this new perspective, this leaky brake model, you realize a lot of those emotional reactions are perfectly natural and legitimate reactions to abnormal circumstances. You know, it's the sort of, you know, you would too kind of phenomenon. So to go back here, you know, in terms of what I was saying about designations in the schools, we need a good one because, you know, we can't call them developmental because, you know, they're probably ahead of the curve. And you know, I'm actually, as a person with leaky brakes, a member of the club, I'm kind of the camp that I really do think they should all go together. It's sort of, I'm sort of making the ignorance is bliss argument here. You know, if you're going to be trapped on a runaway train, best you not be too aware of it. But again, as I say, the real problems start once you're acutely aware of it and you feel powerless to do anything about it. So we can't put it in a developmental class. What are we going to put it in then? Well, I know in Ontario typically they're put in a designation known as behavioral. Wrong thing. You know, behavioral screams. This is a kid who's making poor choices. He's just lazy. He's not motivated. He's trying to piss me off. And, you know, that's not what's happening here. As I say, hitting that brake pedal, nothing's happening. Let's go back to that car analogy for a second. Let's say, you know, you're in that car and you know you're supposed to put stop sign, you hit the brake pedal, nothing happens, you go through the plate glass window, all that stuff I said before. So now, of course, there's a world of judgment on you, right? There are all the bystanders tisk-tisking you and whispering amongst themselves. I mean, you're just being burned at the stake right now. I mean, these young drivers these days, I hope, you know, they throw her in jail and, you know, lock her up, throw away the key, and, you know, oh, you know, how now she's got to pay, you know, for, you know, not caring about the rules, well, all this sort of stuff. So the cops coming over to, you know, drag you away in irons, and at least in this situation, as I say, we know a lot about the braking systems on cars, and we have language, a common language for it. And so you're pretty easily able to say to the police officer, look, I tried to stop, my brakes were out. The other nice thing about braking systems on cars is that because we're all very familiar with them at this point, it's very easy to see whether you're telling the truth or not. So, just a quick inspection of the car. Oh yeah, look, the brake line is broken. There's the brake fluid all over the place. Oh my gosh, you're a victim too. So suddenly, in a moment there, you've gone from vilified to vindicated. That now you've got support around you because everyone knows what it's like to feel powerless in the situation. It's not comfortable. And so it's easy to commiserate now with that person. Say, oh, I feel so bad for you. I can't imagine being in that situation. I know how much you love little old ladies. And just, seeing the whites of her eyes, knowing what's about to happen, and not being able to do anything about it. I don't even want to think about it. I really feel for you. Just say that's fine if we're talking about a real car with real leaky brakes. But imagine that scenario now where the cops come over to put you in irons, and you feel the exact same way. You tried to stop, and something misfired here, but you don't really have the language for it. You don't really know what to say. And maybe you do say something like, "That wasn't my fault," because that's all you can come up with because you're 9. And imagine that the police officer really didn't know anything about the braking systems on cars or how to verify whether you're telling the truth or not. Odds are, what would happen to you now with that police officer is very much what happens with these kids more often than not, where not only doesn't this kid, get taken from the vilified and put into the vindicated category, we tend to just get madder at him. Because now he's just making excuses, right? He's now just demonstrated to us not only does he think he's above the rules, doesn't matter about property destruction and enjoys hurting little old ladies, he's also now demonstrated to us he doesn't even have the moral caliber to be accountable and own up to the crappy choice he just made. That's how you feel then. As I say, do that for 16 years, you might start feeling like this fellow. Actually, this guy, he was 13 when he drew this. It was during my training to be a psychologist. It was my first placement during my master's, and he was 13 going on 68. I mean, you could see in his eyes. I mean, and if you know these kids, you know what I'm talking about here. It's funny again how often we think of them as immature, because in some ways these kids, possess a wisdom when they're walking through my door that I can have conversations with them. They've seen things that most people, those normies, go through their entire lives have never seen or knowing or understanding. And this was an open custody facility I was working at, so life was clearly not good. There had been a lot go awry in this young boy's life. He had 13 years of misperception, mislabeling, misdiagnosis, mistreatment, blame, and shame, and ridicule, and ostracization, and he'd had it, of course, as many of these kids have. And big, thick, impenetrable walls, and just because you have leaky brakes, just because you have a neurodevelopmental disability, doesn't mean you understand what's going on or how to put it into words. But I knew that this particular boy was good on the computer, and so one of our sessions, I just opened up Microsoft Paint, rolled out of the way, and told him to have at it, and this is what he drew. And as interesting as the drawing is, it was really interesting how he did it and what he did with it. So he drew the sad face first, and then he just started to scribble. I mean, you should have seen the intensity with which he did it. His knuckles were white. He just scribbled all these violent colors, occluding his face. These are the leaky brakes. These are those movements that won't stop. This is your attention that keeps leaping all over the place like that high-powered fire hose when you don't want it to. This is the prickling sweat that you can't ignore. This is those different thoughts that scare you or make you feel guilty or bad or gross and that just won't get out of your head. And after he drew this picture, he used the cut and paste function. He took this face, he cut it out, and he moved it to a blank spot on the screen. And then he looked at me with those eyes going on 68, and he said to me, "This is who I want to be." He then took all these lines, moved it back over his face. He said, "But he keeps following me." He then cut the face out again, moved it to another blank spot on the screen. He said, "This is who I want my mom to see. This is who I want my teachers to know." And then he took all the lines, moved them back over his face, and he said, "This is all they see." So if you don't get anything else out of my ramblings tonight, please, as you're going home and the days that follow, remember that face. And remember, something I said at the very beginning, that these kids, oftentimes all surface evidence to the contrary, are not, omnipotent little manipulative masterminds trying to make your day miserable and on and on. Oftentimes, what's going on, they're often very bright kids, as I said earlier, often with some real significant gifts. Because, when you wear yourself on your sleeve, that amplifies everything. The good stuff is bigger, not just that. I had dinner tonight with a few different kids in the Leaky Break Club, and one of the things that came up with that dinner, the topic of conversation, is that, call us what you will, but we ain't wallflowers. So, there's often a lot of giftedness and quickness and wittiness and so much good to draw on too, but the very thin skin, they easily bleed. They're on their sleeve, and they're completely awash in multiple neurodevelopmental disabilities that they just don't understand or have the first clue how to deal with. And of course, what compounds that is that all of us here tonight, parents, extended family that love, educators that care, clinicians that got into the job because they wanted to make life better for kids. All these people around this child, are well-intentioned, but as I said earlier, the well-intentioned ideas are blowing up for well-intentioned patients because they don't understand about that other sink either. They haven't been taught about neurodevelopmental disabilities. I often think of educators, for example, as really the unsung victims, I suppose, of all this. We know that this kid is being victimized. It's really being victimized a few times, because not only does he have developmental disabilities, but they're not being recognized, they're being punished for them, and not getting accommodations for them. It's like, if a child with paraplegia, is told by the gym teacher every day, you need to run 5 laps around just like everyone else, and if you don't, you have detention. Would we be shocked if suddenly that kid decided he didn't like the gym teacher, didn't want to go back to school? Not rocket science, natural reaction to an abnormal circumstance. But that's happening all the time. Not because the gym teacher is a horrible, awful, rotten person, or any of us are, but because, again, we weren't given the information that we needed. And so, which oftentimes the things that we're doing from this perspective over here not only don't help, they make things worse rather than better when the issue is really over here. And so I guess that's a meandering way of saying I'm glad the room's as full as it is. And I'm hoping that this helps, not just the kids, but that helps all of you too, that are up at 4 in the morning. Not just tearing your hair out of frustration, but with tears coming down your face because you have no idea how you got here. Because you just want what's best for your child, and you're trying so hard, and yet you said that thing tonight. How did I become that person? And this is how. We're all victims here. The kids being set up, you as the parent, you're being set up. As I say, really, the other person who's on your side often, you just don't know it yet, is the educator, is the teacher. That, again, I'm not as familiar, obviously, with BC as I am with Ontario, but having talked with a lot of different teachers across Canada, it seems like a pretty common answer that I hear, that you guys are getting roughly tonight with me the same amount of time the average teacher gets in the average teaching program to cover every special need. So what a hell of a setup, eh? These are complex disorders. As I said earlier, you can't just osmose this information in the air as the kid walks through the door. And yet that's what these teachers are expected to do. Well, I remember one teacher saying to me really, really well, she said, it's like we spend 99% of our time in the classroom dealing with stuff, we only spend 0.01% of our time learning to go to teacher's college. That's not fair. And kids can be great if we give them an opportunity. So can teachers. So can anyone. We just have to, again, we have to give them the right sync, and we can't judge them until they're there. And for anyone out here too tonight that might be feeling guilty about, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong sync. No, don't feel loud. You didn't know. I'll judge you from tonight onwards. But you were set up just as much as your child, and everyone who cares and is working with them. So there's Another disorder I mentioned tonight at the beginning, I mentioned about like opposition defiance and rage. You know, I could easily, just like I could spend a day on any one of those other disorders we talked about already, I could easily spend an entire day just, you know, railing on this one. The short answer is, or sorry, the short version is, I should say, is I don't like this disorder. It's a very convenient disorder for folks like myself, which is why I think it was developed to great acclaim and adoption, you know, the DSM-4. I mean, it's nice to have a very efficient way of telling you, yep, he's a brat, have a nice day. It's clean, it gets you out of our office quickly, we can go golf, you know, whatever. But, of course, as I'm sure a lot of you know, this label doesn't really tell you much, doesn't really help you much, doesn't really give you any place to go. It just seems to cement, yep, he should be in that behavioral classroom, he is a bad kid. You know, he's clearly one of these kids who just wakes up each morning and all things being equal goes, I'm going to be a shithead today. He's evil. Well, no. You know, I was fortunate enough that the DSM-4 hadn't been written when I was a kid. Because I guarantee you I would have been slapped with that label. And you know, most of the kids who come into our clinic, we're diagnosing tics a lot. We're definitely diagnosing things like OCD a lot, ADHD. One thing we never have to diagnose by tertiary care is that one. They all got that one. In fact, that may be the only one they've got to this point. And you know, I guess, you know, again, the short version is that I've never really bought the logic behind this disorder. That it is just making poor choices, and that by extension, you're all crappy parents because they learned those bad choices from somewhere. And so, of course, you know, the number one treatment problem with defiant disorder is parent management training. I straighten you guys out so you don't mess this kid up again after we fix them for you. Well, it never really flew for me. I'm sure it makes the hair stand up in the back of your neck as a parent, but yeah, you know, as a kid growing up with, you know, undiagnosed, you know, unknown in that way what you need. You know, I wasn't having fun. I mean, remember, you know, behavior manipulation, it's all supposed to be about making your life better, right? It's supposed to be about meeting your aims more, achieving more of what you got. I never got ice cream. I had no friends. I kept getting, you know, stuff taken away. My mom cried when I walked in the room. My dad threatened to send me to army camp. I mean, you know, as I don't agree much with Dr. Phil, but, you know, one thing I can't argue with is his phrase, how's that working for you? I mean, we're usually so busy thinking about how miserable these ODD kids are making us. We kind of forget to think about, are they any happier? Because again, behavior's pretty simple. I already gave you the 2 rules. If it feels good, do it. If it don't feel good, don't do it anymore. Pigeons can figure that out. And so if this kid's his own worst enemy, if he seems to be making choices that are kicking him in the crotch, I mean, if no one's this kid's worst enemy than he is, that can't possibly be behavior. That's 180 degrees opposite of what we understand behavior to be. These kids are manipulating themselves. These kids are manipulating the situation to make their life worse. Yeah, no, I don't think so. So there seems to be a lot of holes in this, and there are certain things in the research that didn't jive. So anyway, long story, a little bit shorter. Really, the point I want to make is that here's a dictionary definition of compliance. And of course, compliance is the kryptonite ODD, right? If you would just do as you're told, you'd be neither oppositional nor defiant. We've cured you. You know, we've ridden the world of ODD. And so really, we just have to teach these kids to be compliant, right? So in the dictionary, what does it say is required for compliance? Well, the dictionary tells us if you're going to be compliant, if you're going to be neither oppositional nor defiant, firstly, you're required to delay your own goals. That sounds like it needs a braking system. You then have to switch and sustain your attention on the imposed goals. Gosh, that sounds like it needs a braking system too. Then you need to regulate back. You're kind of pissed off. You're not allowed to do your first goal anymore. That needs a braking system too. You know, it ends up that pulling off compliance needs what neuropsychologists would coin a sophisticated level of executive functioning. Or, you know, as I would say in our model, you need a lot of brakes working pretty well most of the time to pull off compliance. Because, you know, if you have leaky brakes over your thoughts and you keep thinking about your own goal and perseverating on your own goal, you're going to be non-compliant. You know, if your attention's like that high-powered fire hose, that poor kid with, ADD, attention deficit, that horrible name, and you're not keeping your attention on cleaning your room, even though your mom's, reminded you 15,432 times, you're being non-compliant. If, when the teacher tells you to put down your, PSP and pick up your math book, you tell her exactly what she can do with the math book. You're definitely being non-compliant. Does that mean all these kids are oppositional defiant? I guess so. Does it mean it was because they were making crappy choices? Absolutely not. When you look at it this way, it really kind of throws the whole diagnosis into question, because a diagnosis only has utility if it helps you identify an independent group of kids, and I'm not sure that this does, because basically well, all right, there could be well, let me show you some of the research here. There could be oh, okay, I don't have that slide now. Let me just tell you about some of the research. There could be a group of kids out there that are just ODD and nothing else. I haven't met any yet, worked in tertiary care for a decade, but maybe there's some. But there's been research done on that, and you know what? We can't find them anywhere else either. It ends up that, once researchers are switch things too, because you don't think of the right research questions to ask until you're coming from the right place. And so once researchers were considering this possibility that maybe non-compliance is just an extension of the symptom cluster, you would expect, you could predict to see if a person has poor self-regulation. You ask questions like, gee, are there any kids out there with ODD and nothing else? Well, internationally, it's been replicated a number of times now that almost all the time, if not all the time, if a person's got ODD, there's something else going on. And guess what those things are? 40% of the time, it was, 18% of the time it was a tic disorder. 80% of the time it was ADHD. 40% of the time it was an anxiety disorder like OCD. Detecting a trend here. These are all the disorders we talked about tonight, right? These are the leaky brake disorders. So surprise, surprise, a person who has leaky brakes needs to have a hard time pulling off compliance. We may be completely ignoring the other diagnoses, but boy, we caught that one. And we've given them the diagnosis of ODD. I'll tell you what that research tells people in my position, people I'll be talking to as well, for example, professionals. That puts some pressure on us, because those fun, happy days of, yep, piece of bread, have a nice day, are over. Because the jury is in. And if I'm diagnosing a kid with ODD and nothing else, if I'm just saying, yep, piece of bread, have a nice day, I'm incompetent. It's clinically lazy. I'm not saying that these symptoms don't exist. Of course they exist. I see them every day at a tertiary care center. But you don't stop with ODD, you start with ODD. It's just a neurological cry for help. That's the car going through the intersection. All right, so let's find out which leaky brakes caused that accident. That led to another neat area of research that no one would have considered before this too, which is in the treatment of ODD. The parent management training, as I say, there are holes in that, there are problems with some of the findings, oh, that's okay, we've got a great new treatment for ODD. I'll be talking with clinicians about that at some length tomorrow. And it works a lot better than anything we've had before. It lasts longer, leads to all sorts of ancillary and positive outcomes that the other treatments never did. It's great treatment. You know what it is? We ignore the ODD and treat the leaky brakes. And once we do that, the leaky brakes go away all on, the opposite of defiance, the ODD goes away all on its own. That's a big head shift for people to make. But it's interesting because data doesn't lie, right? And in our clinic over the last 10 years in the brake shop, we've got a whole menu of services we offer. But I'll tell you one thing we don't offer. Nowhere on our menus we found attitude adjustment. Or why the 101 reasons why you should stop punching people in the face. None of that stuff is on there. We are a skill building clinic. We're a brake shop. We're getting you up on the hoist. We're dealing with the brakes. That's it. And in some ways, it's a very sort of objective process as opposed to subjective. And if we were to kind of follow through the traditional logic of ODD, if some of these kids are just, ooh, I'm going to be a craphead today, when they come into our clinic, Okay, maybe they have leaky brakes, and maybe we help them with it, but, you know, I guess by this whole model, they were an asshole coming in, they're going to be an asshole going out. In fact, actually, I've probably made them a more effective asshole by fixing the brakes for them. That's not what we see. I mean, that's not what we see at all. It's a strikingly different picture. We have great data to show that all these horrible, awful brats come in, and we don't talk to them at all about what a brat they are. We just fix the brakes. Suddenly they're not a brat anymore. Well, I think we need to rethink behavior. But of course, you know, as I say, a lot of these kids, the double, triple jeopardy going on, you know, they've got all these neurodevelopmental disabilities we're not understanding, and so we're using the wrong approaches. We're using the carrot and stick when you know, we know darn well you can't fix a developmental disability with reward and punishment. So of course that just increases everyone's frustration and stress. We go around and around and around, and we're there, which is probably why you're all here tonight. You know, we have a fancy name for this one too. We call it intermittent explosive disorder. Probably better known as throwing a rage, pitching a snit, having a tantrum, blowing your cool, or just, you know, fill in whatever language you like. You know, this is your brain. I want to show you your brain on rage, okay? So to give you a bit of an orientation of the landscape here, so this is the front of your brain here, right here, this pink area. It's called the frontal lobe. Very original naming skills, apparently, neurologists. So our frontal lobe is the front of the brain here. Your eyeballs will be right over here. So everything I've been talking about tonight in terms of braking systems, this is the area of the brain I've really been talking about. And you know, this area of the brain is what really distinguishes us from other animals. It's the frontal lobe is much bigger, better developed in us than other species. And you know, our ability to put the brakes on, our ability to delay gratification, to do impression management, to problem solve, to be flexible, to tolerate frustration. It's all right in there. All the good stuff you need if you're going to be ODD. Your personality's in there. Who am I as a person? How do I want to come on with the situation? Your mental workbench is in there. You know, where's that crisis plan again? So all that really good stuff that you need at a moment when your beaker's starting to get too full is right there. So let me show you, I've told you about a lot of dirty tricks that have already been played on these kids. Let me show you the dirtiest one of all. Because what we've seen in terms of rage with neuroimaging, when these kids, when their beakers are starting to fill, when they're getting overstimulated by it, the pressure's rising, you know, with all of these demands and a deficient braking system, this area of the brain they most need at that moment grounds out. Until at the moment of rage, it's like an electrical blackout in the brain. This explains a few things about it. For one thing, it explains why, more often than not, when folks like yourselves are coming into my office, you're describing your kid as being like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You were kind of right. I mean, not to say that your child actually has a monster within, but you were bang on when you perceived that this child is working with a very different brain in Hyde mode than he was in Jekyll mode. You know, this also explains why none of your strategies are working. Again, it's not that you're dumb or you're not trying hard enough or you don't know the right strategy. You know what? Strategies appeal to this area of the brain. And so once you've reached this point, you know, it doesn't matter if you're some novice or some supposed Northern American expert. I mean, throw whatever strategy you have at the kid, and they're just going to be bouncing off a big back in 10 minutes. Something. I mean, this kid is just not available for what you want to be available for at this point. And I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about here. In fact, there's kind of two people in the world. There's people who've seen a rage and there's people who haven't. And if you in the audience, if you've seen a rage, you know it. If you're in the audience, you're not quite sure if you've seen a rage or not, you haven't. You're unmistakable. So that first group out there in the audience, you know what I'm talking about. You see, some of you describe, it's not only just a blackout in the brain. Some parents describe, it's almost like a blacking out in the eyes. They see when the child leaves. And you know, the eyes just kind of glaze over. They get dark and everything goes to hell in a handbasket at this point. And I'll tell you, we've got good treatment in the brake shop for rage, both in London but also online, and we've got good data for it. And And it works really well, and I'm going to be talking to people tomorrow about it, etc. But I'll tell you, you can go through our entire website, and I will guarantee you will not find a single strategy anywhere, a single video, a single podcast. There will be nothing on there that will tell you what to do at this point. Because I don't got nothing you don't already know. It's a pretty short list at this point, isn't it? I mean, besides back down the hatches, keep everyone safe, enjoy the ride, I don't have much more for you. What I've got for you is proactive. It's about, again, from a different perspective, looking at what's actually going on a little bit different. These aren't kids that are having tempers. They're not angry. These kids have more, when these kids raise, it's more in common, this is more in common with epilepsy than it does behavioral choice. And once we start, recognizing that, looking at it from a different perspective, there's a lot you can do proactively just not to get to this point. Things that on the surface you wouldn't have ever thought of before because they don't seem to have anything to do with rage. But what they do have to do with is keeping the pressure down, keeping the beat empty, so you never get to this point where your kid's gone and you can't talk to him. Incidentally, those folks out there that wonder about Jekyll and Hyde, I get this question a lot. If you're wondering, which one's my real kid? That's easy. I haven't met a kid, but I can already tell you it's Jekyll. I mean, Jekyll's who these kids would be all the time, 24/7, if they have a choice in it. But, as I hope is becoming very clear with, this theme I'm hammering through tonight, all these different symptoms, all these different disorders, things you're contending with, they have nothing to do with choice. They have to do with the skill deficit, this kid's burden. And there's one last thing I want to point out too. This phenomenon explains one other thing that probably screws you in your head at 4 in the morning. Because, I lied. I said this was the worst neurological trick. There's one that's even a little worse. Because, after the storm, after this kid has, lost his last friend, has blown those, residential credits he spent 4 months building up, after he ripped up, his favorite artwork, made his sister cry, whatever, after all this carnage is behind him, Jekyll comes back. Just in time to see what he just did. Now, the way this one messes with you, these are the kids that, 5 minutes ago, the depths of hell were coming out of this kid's mouth and chasing around the house with a knife. You're now traumatized, cleaning up glass, shaking. And suddenly this kid comes up to you and says, I love you, Mom. Can I have a hug? Yeah. You feel like your head's going to pop off and spin around the room. No, you can't have a hug. What the hell's going on here? Is he multiple personalities? Is he just trying to get out of trouble now? Does he not remember what just happened? Again, you're grabbing at straws trying to figure out what the heck is this? WTF, all this stuff. What it is that your real kid just came back. And again, you guys are on the same side, just don't know it yet. He's in complete agreement with you. When these kids say they don't remember, sometimes they don't, but more often than not, it's just a crude defense mechanism. It's all you can come up with. If you are the exact opposite in your soul of what you just did, how do you reconcile that? And so sometimes it may just be flat out denial. And I'll tell you the other thing that these kids do a lot is they appear to be very remorseful. They burst into tears afterwards. They're crying. They're inconsolable. And if you've wondered before those crocodile tears, again, are they just trying to mitigate the punishment? Now, no. I'll tell you the other common complaint or referral concern in these files this thick that come across my desk every week is this kid's talking about killing himself. All this suicidal ideation and such. And there's a couple things I want to say about that. First of all, 99.999% of the time, once I investigate that concern, where those statements are coming out are right at this moment, just after Jekyll comes back. Where, again, the remorse is so great. I mean, it's often when we think about teenage suicide and such, we kind of look at it from, the perspective, sort of parasuicide, perspective. They're trying to get attention. They're feeling, they've been wronged and want people to feel sorry for them. What have I don't work with those kids. I can't really comment, but I know that these kids aren't those kids. They aren't talking that way. These kids, when they talk about killing themselves, it's sort of this sad, pathetically noble last-ditch attempt at accountability. These are kids that are saying to me, my family would be a better family without me. I don't want to do that to a mother anymore. At least my class will be able to learn if I'm not there anymore. These are not kids that are saying, oh, I'll kill myself and then they'll see, then they'll be sorry, they'll all be crying at my funeral and wish they had treated me better. No, these are kids that are basically saying, I can't live, I can't bear another day on this runaway train. I keep mowing down people that I love and I have to watch. And I've tried everything I can with my big brain that I can think of to try and stop this runaway train. Nothing's working. I think it's time to derail the train. It's all I got left. And so, again, once you've switched headspaces and you look at these kids from a different perspective, they're great kids. And often they could teach us something about accountability. And to go to harp a little, take one last dig at sort of behavioral choice in this old sink here. Again, if it feels good, do it. If it don't feel good, don't do it no more. If this is a behavior problem, then these kids are getting up each day, consciously, purposely manipulating the situation to make choices that make them want to kill themselves. It doesn't work that way. So I want to wrap up shortly here simply because I want to leave some time for questions. And I think we have over 20 minutes before we end. So obviously I've spent, the entire night sort of painting the pictures. I said, if you were coming in and expecting me just to have slide after slide and try this, I'd be pretty disappointed. I haven't given you any strategies at all. There's kind of two reasons for that. One is that, as I showed you at the beginning, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is an introduction, an invitation. There is a ton of that stuff online. And, you can read it on a PDF as easily as I can read it off a slide. Just running through lists of strategies doesn't seem to be the best use of our time. If I don't give you the model first, all of my strategies are going to sound like dumb ideas anyway. But once I give you the model, you're intelligent people. You probably don't need me to tell you half the strategies because the light bulb's gone off. You get it now from this new vantage point. What you should be doing is obvious now. But as I say, there's certainly lots of what to do, how to roll up your sleeves now online, including referred at the beginning, actual direct virtual treatment now too. But to go back to this car analogy one more time to really set the stage for the kinds of strategies, the kinds of treatments and approaches that will work for these kids. Let's think again about you being in the car, and let's say now you're roaring down the highway on a 45-degree decline and going 180 kph, and the cops behind you with the cherries going. The little lady didn't learn; she's walking across the road running, and the road ends just ahead into a plummet into the ocean, and it's not a rocks below. I'm betting you're probably already pretty motivated to stop. I'm betting you already know where the brake pedal is and how to use it. So let's say you hit the brake pedal and nothing happens. Again, when the brake pedal hits the floor, you've got no brakes, you've got still lifts, and you've got a problem. I'm going to be of absolutely no use to you at this point if I'm sitting shotgun to you and I turn to you with a bag of Smarties and wave it in front of your face and say, I'll give you this whole bag of Smarties and you stop the car right now. Misses the point completely, doesn't it? But that's okay. In this old sink over here this kid just doesn't want it and I need to make him want it. I've still got one variation on, I still have one theme left. I've tried carrot, now let's try stick. The Smarties didn't work, so let's try punishment. So, Missy, if you don't stop this car right now, you're in such trouble, you forget what's going on this weekend, you're grounded, you wait till your father gets home, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that one probably did change the situation. We probably now hate each other as we plummet to our mutual demise. But what I still haven't done from this old sink of rewards and punishments over here is I haven't done what I really need to do, which is to blink and look around for a moment and see that you're already hitting the brake pedal that day. I don't need to motivate you to hit the brake pedal. You're already hitting it. Again, it's missing the point. I need to have an epiphany at this point, which is, holy crap, we're in the same car. maybe if we collaborate together on this, we can problem solve our way out of it. And I use those terms very purposely. If you've never heard of collaborative problem solving before, you want to hear about collaborative problem solving. If you've ever heard of the book, The Explosive Child, or heard of the name Dr. Ross Green, actually, I saw last night online, he's coming to Vancouver in like November or something.
November 6th.
There you go. Because I can tell you that everything you learn here tonight, adopting this model and mind frame is going to be extremely compatible. And again, a lot of what Dr. Green talks about is just, it's just semantics again. He talks about, pathways. I talk about leaky brakes. But whatever the language is, he's basically saying the same thing. This is a skill deficit. And when we look at it this way, things are going to go better. And I can tell you, collaborative problem solving is a big part of treating that rage piece I was talking about earlier proactively. And you can see a lot of reference to it in materials and such online. So there'll be two very compatible approaches if you want to learn more about it. But anyway, going back to this analogy, if you're roaring down that hill and you're hitting the brake pedal madly and the brakes aren't working, the smarties aren't working, the threats aren't working, the pleading, the cajoling, the bribing, the begging, the crying, nothing's working. I can really only think of three ways out of that particular situation. Fix the brakes. Don't go down the damn hill in the first place. Or find another way of stopping the car. And when you go through all of those different resources on leakybrakes.ca, whether it's the strategy handouts, the virtual treatment, they're all going to fall into one of these basic themes. That, whether it's different Medicaid. By the way, once kids understand this philosophy, I've found that oftentimes the resistance to medication goes away. Because it's no longer just yet another thing some adult is trying to impose on them that they don't want to do. It's not just another sucky thing about their life to take it. Once they understand about leaky brakes, all I need to say to them is, you know what these pills are? What? Brake fluid. Oh. Suddenly they want to take it. But whether it's a medication or whether it's, I'm not a medication hawker, I'm a psychologist, so whether it's my bailiwick, it's more sort of a skill-building cognitive behavioral approach. Regardless, there's different treatments for different leaky brakes that can actually not fix leaky brakes. It's a chronic condition to manage, but at least get a little bit of the air out of lines, optimize the braking system, get rid of the big problems the leaky brakes are causing rather than the leaky brakes completely themselves. So that's certainly one theme. The other theme is, as I say, find a detour. And for the educators, I'll be emphasizing to them, in their lingo, these are accommodation kids as opposed to modification kids. And we don't need to lower the bar for these kids. And oftentimes, when they resist strategies, it's because they're worried we're lowering the bar. That their worst fears are being realized. You are calling me stupid. By this approach, no, we're not calling you stupid. By definition, by this approach, we know you've probably got a pretty high-powered engine under the hood there. And if someone buys a Porsche with leaky brakes, you don't just never drive it again and put it up on blocks out in the field. It's a Porsche. What a great engine to squander. You just need to find the right environment to drive it in so you're not getting in so many accidents. And that's really what detours or accommodations are about. It's about being flexible on the means as opposed to the ends. You're not driving to different places. You're just taking different routes than everyone else. But you're still capable of getting there. And when that's emphasized, again, that certainly helps buy-in, but also salvaging self-identity and esteem. And then, of course, external braking systems. Really, these kids often do their best when what they're lacking up here can be compensated for out here. And so, well, again, using education as an example, the ultimate external braking system in the school system is an educational system, EA. If I had to write a comprehensive yet succinct job definition for an educational system, I can do it in 3 words: surrogate frontal lobe. You guys know, if you're working with an EA who's worth her weight in gold, making all the difference for your kid, that's what she's doing. She's not doing the work for your kid. She's not, making the kid into a different kid with a different attitude. What she's doing is she's providing that braking system. She's telling them when to do what, for how long, when to move on to something else. And once she's got that structure, all that potential, all that raw material he always had but was being squandered because he couldn't regulate it, is now starting to be realized. It's not an accident that a lot of these kids gravitate towards things like air cadets. You know, they want to become a teenager, they want to join the militia, or you know, they want to be enrolled in, you know, karate classes or something like that. It's not that all these kids want to become more efficient killing machines. You know, what it is that these are all very good circuit frontal lobes too. They're highly structured activities. That you know, if you're an Army and you join the Army, they kind of prefer it if you know, hand in your frontal lobe when you sign on the dotted line. You will be happiest if from sun to sundown we tell you exactly what to do and you just do it. And boy, that's precisely the piece, that's precisely the skill that these kids are missing. And again, sometimes it makes all the difference in the world. One other way I describe it sometimes, you know, the analogy is, because again, it's not fixed, but it's, you know, if you've ever gone bowling before, you know, those atrocious bowlers that, you know, when they go to bowl, like everyone ducks because the ball's going to end up in 4 lanes or whatever. And so for those bowlers, so, you know, they don't feel too crappy with themselves, they put those bumpers into the gutters. And that way, even though they have no control over their ball whatsoever, the ball has very leaky brakes, it's still going to more or less go where it needs to go, because those bumpers kind of guide it as it careens down the way. That's what external brakes are. Again, it's not about fixing or anything like that, or even about improving the braking system. It's just about, okay, you're careening wildly all over the place. What do we need in place just so that, you know, you're not setting fire to the cat? So, anyway, yeah, I didn't leave as much time as I intended for the questions, I apologize, but trust me, it's more time than I often manage to. So, actually, it's about 10 minutes longer than I usually manage. So, again, I hope a lot of it's helpful. Again, it's not a lot of detail in any particular thing, but hopefully it just gives you a different way of looking at this stuff so that you can always go access that detail. You can now go find those particular strategies we recommend online, but you can do it from this new sync over here. It's going to get you a little further, a little easier, a little quicker. So thank you for your attention. And
you made comment about, amongst a number of things, that breaks need to help sensory inputs. And I suspect that one of our 2 sons is really suffering in this way. And we find that he finds a lot of calm in electronics. It seems to cause him to be able to manage some of these sensory inputs, to wind down the cacophony, as you call it. Problem is, after he's been plugged into these things for a certain period of time, the rage response is amplified, especially at the moment of removing from these electrons. So we have the advantage of knowing he can be in a calm place, satisfied for a number of hours, even half an hour, 2 hours, depending on how distracted we are with our several other children. But the problem is that benefit is met with a huge disadvantage at the end. What is your opinion on
short-term gains or long-term gains?
That's right. What's your opinion? You know, and we've had so many different opinions on electronics good, electronics bad, electronics ambiguous. What's your opinion?
Well, and you know, there's a lot of things that I can say to that, and I'll say a few. I mean, the first thing I'll say, and actually I apologize, I should remember to say this generally before we even ask for questions, is that I'm always going to stumble and mumble and put my hands in my pockets and shuffle my feet a little bit more when questions start with my child, because hopefully one of the messages that came across tonight is that, again, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And if I spend 2 hours saying you need to really understand what's happening before you start suggesting solutions, I'm kind of full of shit then if I then just start saying to you, hey, I've never met your kid, don't know what they have, but here's what you do. So what I can offer is sort of maybe a bit of a process of thinking, I suppose. I can tell you a little bit about what I know around, you know, obviously that's a common scenario that we see in the workshop, and hopefully some of it will help. One thing that pops to mind I want to mention is that you're absolutely right that in some ways, you know, the computer electronic is sort of, you know, a leaky brake's best friend, because in various respects. I mean, if you have ADHD and your attention's leaping all over the place, the computer's about the only thing that can keep up with it. You can also have 15 windows open, and so you look like you're sustaining attention on one thing, but you're really not. You're hopping around 15 different things on the screen. If you have OCD, for example, and you really you thrive on predictability. You're living life in a minefield. There's too many surprises, transitions that you just can't cope with and handle. The computer game is sort of an oasis because, I have no idea what's going to happen when I walk in the living room or go to school again tomorrow, but I know every time I turn left right here, I die. Every time I turn here, that was my left. Every time I turn, I'm terrified there for a second, I destroyed my car. And if I turn right, I'm going to win a gold ring or whatever. And that level of consistency may be very rare and very much sought out. As you say, it could be a sensory piece that certainly, and I should mention that in terms of the sensory processing, dysfunctional sensory integration, sensory defensiveness, whatever term you guys are familiar with, that's one of the reasons we're an interdisciplinary clinic is because different disciplines are better at getting involved with different leaky breaks. And certainly, this is an area where in our clinic, we hand it off to the occupational therapist. Occupational therapists as a discipline do a lot more work and a lot more research and I shouldn't say treatment, but sort of accommodating that particular leaky break for these kids. And so you're absolutely right. That sometimes if you can't control lots of noise or stimulation out here, a video game can serve as two things. First of all, if it's louder than everything else around you, which is sometimes a contradiction. I mean, the kids can't handle noise, but then their video game is turned up to 8,000 decibels. It really functions as sort of I can't ignore all these other things. So a way of kind of faking ignoring is to turn my one thing up so loud that even though I can't ignore all these other things, I just can't even hear them anymore. So they can't possibly, distract me anymore and get me off track because I wouldn't be able to hear them, leaky breaks or not. And also sometimes, again, sticking with the sensory theme, it's all the difference in the world, again, that predictability piece. It's all the difference in the world, whether it's a noise you weren't expecting and therefore you weren't prepared for, versus, again, with the video games, I know the noises it makes. I know, also when I go around this corner and it dies, you can go, when I go around this corner, it's going to go, woo! And so, I'm prepared for that sensory input. So I could go on, but there's so many different ways that, yeah, these things can be really compatible with our kids. But, as you say, then there's the other end. And so, again, I'm not going to say exactly what's happening because it can be different for different kids depending on the leaky breaks, but I can tell you, for a lot of kids, what you're describing, the inability to get off, well, that's making a transition, right? And so the leaky break that comes to mind there isn't necessarily sensory, it's more around the thoughts. That if you can't put the brakes on your thoughts, remember, you can't delay your goal for someone else's goal. I have to finish this level just right. I have to do this combination of moves just so before I can shift myself off this, this track. If that's ground zero, then we're really talking more of that kind of OCD. And so again, just hypothetically, if that's really more what's going on with a kid, there's different things we can do. For one thing, it can help that. Of course, as you found, once he's actually into the game and it's not the kid anymore, OCD's taking over, that's when the fallout begins. And so one way of being proactive is actually setting things up for an expected transition. So knowing that, like before OCD gets to get in the room and pick up the controller, when you're nowhere near the video game system, when you're not stuck on that piece because it's just, you're out of that moment, that's when you're coming up maybe with your collaborative plan about, what's the amount of time that I'm going to be on, or at what point am I going to get to in the game and then get off, so that it's you calling the shot rather than the OCD once you're in there. And so, in some ways, you can use the child's, adherence to rules to your advantage because, we've got this rule, I'm getting off at this point. So, so that makes it a bit of a softer transition. Another way of making a softer transition is a lot of these kids, of course, again, once they're into the game, they're going to be losing track of time or what have you. Audible reminders, don't always work that well because you hear it, shut up, mom, and you forget it. One of the links we have on our website, I think under our resource section, is to a website called addwarehouse.com. They've got these wonderful, they call them time timers. And it's a timer, but it's a visual timer. So rather than tick, 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 tick a game, what it is it's this big clock. When you pull it over, let's say to 10 minutes or what have you, now from 0 to 10 is red. And the red just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And a visual cue is going to be a lot more consistent than an auditory one. Like if it's sitting right beside the screen, for example, you're going to keep seeing it out of the corner of your eye. And so even though you just told him 5 minutes ago he's got to get off in 5 minutes, and so it seems like he should remember, it's going to be even more of a gradual transition if he just kind of keeps seeing it out of the corner of his eyes and smiles and gets smaller, so that there's less of a chance that, I forgot I was supposed to go off and now I'm surprising you. And so then, you just kind of set, whether it's for video games or whatever, just as a basic rule, when the red's gone, time to move on. Also with OCD, it can be helpful to have, when you have to transition off something you really enjoy, it's helpful if you're transitioning to something else you really enjoy. And so, put away the video game, it's time to do your math homework. It's probably going to cause even bigger, blow-ups than time to turn off the video game, OCD, it's time to go organize your books alphabetically. Whatever. The tongue-in-cheek there, but you get the idea. I could go on, but I guess... Thank you for your questions. No, that's okay. No, you didn't do it. I did. No, but you can see what I mean, though. I mean, without really knowing exactly what's happening, because I'm not your clinician, I can only really throw out ideas.
Pretty much exactly.
Okay. So, my feelings won't be hurt if you have to bolt because it's 9 o'clock now. You have those other roles to get back to. But I don't have to leave at exactly this moment if people want to get one more question.
Just a quick question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Just wondering, do you change your strategies at all, either the way you discuss it with the children, their siblings, parents, or the treatment, if there's also an intellectual delay?
Right. Well, I can tell you that because a lot of, certainly, what I'm doing in the clinic is skill building healthcare, learn to manage your Leaky work better and stuff. You need sort of a certain level of cognitive functioning there, obviously. And so we've had lots of kids with a mild developmental disability, go through our various services and have success from it. I think lower than mild, if you're in the more of a moderate or severe range, then this kind of stuff is going to be more helpful for the caregivers to kind of understand and scaffold things around as opposed to really putting the kid in the driver's seat. Anyway, having said that, I can tell you that one of the dirty tricks, one of the rules of thumb that psychologists use in a situation is that if I know a kid has a mild developmental disability, but I don't have his WISC scores in front of me, I don't know his exact IQ, the rule of thumb the psychologists will use is that we'll take their chronological age and we'll divide by 2. And that'll be a rough estimate of where this kid will be at. So I can tell you that in terms of using our approach, I take that to heart. So if we have programming that you kind of need to be, say, 8 years old to really start to get some benefit out of it, you're not just going to be spinning your wheels, then we've had lots of kids with mild developmental disabilities go through that programming, but they weren't chronologically 8 years old. They were physically 16, which meant they were about chronologically 8 years old. So that's a consideration, but I guess to more directly answer your question, do we alter our language much for various, people, intellect levels, not a lot. I mean, I'm going to be talking leaky breaks when I talk to the doctors tomorrow. And I'll tell you, one of our dirty little secrets is that I talked with teachers, were saying to them earlier, the most common feedback I ever hear from the teacher is, why didn't someone tell me this 20 years ago? And they're either saying that with tears in their eyes, with anger in their voice, or excited because they can't wait till Monday now to do what they've always wanted to do with this kid. That's the most common feedback I get from educators. The most common feedback I get from doctors is it's one of these things where you're like, oh, that's nice. Oh, God, that's horrible. Like, reactions. The most common feedback I get is, you know, I've been diagnosing this for 30 years. Today's the first day I really understood it. So yeah, and this is, wow, a nice compliment. Holy shit. So I guess I kind of walk my talk in what I say about leaky breaks up here, which is I'm not going to get lost in jargon. And so, you know, if a physician or a psychologist or whoever, you know, thinks I lack credibility because I'm telling them important things, but in a language that seems beneath them, well, I don't think I'm the only problem. So anyway, that's my bias. But you know, and I find it actually probably helps a bit with normalization too, because you know, again, it's a pretty young mind, as I mentioned with the sentence, can understand what leaky breaks. And so if this kid's used to being talked down to, but I'm talking to his doctor at the same time when I'm talking to him, maybe help him by it. Actually, often when we do our treatments, I should mention that, you know, certainly it's changing the landscape now. We're getting more into virtual treatment. It's actually improving. It's, with our groups in the past, at least one parent had to be, and sometimes both were there. Sometimes siblings were there. Sometimes teachers or EAs were there. You know, we had girlfriends in there. I mean, like, we really emphasized again what I was saying earlier when we walked the talk, that you are all on the same side. It's not a bad kid that needs fixing for the rest of you. You all have a common enemy, and you all need to be in this group to learn about it and to get better at bossing it back. So, and again,
Can you move here?
well, you know, all joking aside, I mean that is certainly. I sleep a lot better now that, you know, I do focus so much on this. This online piece, creating the videos, creating the, you know, I've got some wicked apps designed that I'm just waiting for the funding for, and you know, just to get all this stuff out there, because you know, I can't be everywhere at once, obviously. I mean, just, you know, expecting everyone to come to me one at a time with bottlenecks. You know, my OCD would be beating me up going home to any presentation, thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't tell them this. Oh, how could I have not told them this? It makes me feel a lot better knowing that this stuff now, I mean, I don't have to be in Victoria because the website is. And I'm there virtually, and I hope I can help virtually. I mentioned the feedback of the website, and a close second to my favorite feedback is just when I go to a school or something and the principal shakes my hand and says, we've never met, you've never been here, let me tell you how much you changed their school over the last 3 years. That's awesome. That's when, again, that's when the system's working really well. There's never going to be enough doctors. There's always going to be wait lists if we're thinking of treatment as you've got to be in front of me. So let's make that much relevant, and then I don't have to.
Is there a mini presentation available online?
Oh yeah.
For the kids.
Yeah, let me just bring the website up here again quickly. You guys can all, by the way, the website is very mobile friendly too. I spend much more time going through some of our virtual treatment videos on my iPad than on the website, but yeah, there's different places you can find videos for the adults, but in terms for the kids, this leaky break toolbox, this has really been what I've been pouring my energies into the last couple of years, and that we've just recently rolled out. It's the virtual treatment piece I was talking about. And, you know, I could spend lots of time going on about this too, but suffice it to say, the videos are consumer directed. So, yes, teachers are intended to get something out of it, and parents or even other doctors can use as an online curricula for doing CPID with a kid or something. But the videos are primarily directed at kids. And because I work in tertiary care, and for the kids I work with are the cream of the crop, I thought of my average patient when I did these videos, which is probably an 11-year-old boy with a short attention span, who gets bored easily and doesn't like to read. And so with that kid in mind, I made these videos. So they're short, they're quirky, they're dense. There's a lot of stuff in there. So, you know, the early feedback has been the kids enjoy watching them repeatedly because they get something different out of them each time because there's a lot packed in a short period of time. But yes, look at that. I can't even see a one-word answer.